Theodore Roosevelt was an intellectual, and he also was a celebrity president, and the only president to have earned both the Nobel Peace Prize and the Congressional Medal of Honor. And he would like for us to recall that today, because up in his Valhalla, wherever he is, he's playing polo. He's doing something that's physical. I know that. So let's go to the end of let's go to 1865, and just a couple of items about the Industrial Revolution as it played out from 1865 to 1900. The Industrial Revolution, as the nation experienced it in 35 years, it was rapid, it was intense, it was exploitive. The Industrial Revolution was built on the 14-hour day, 10 cents an hour, and built on child labor. And by 1900, when our first Industrial Revolution was over, by 1900, that the United States had emerged as the world's largest, most powerful economic power, not military power yet, economic power. And also, by 1900, we had the world's largest industrial accident rate. But nobody cared, because it was a social Darwinistic America. It was all about, robber barons and captains of industry. It was all about the rustle of greenbacks, the hiss of steam, the clang of railroad iron, the bang, bang, bang of rivet guns. And as I said, it was intense, it was exploitive, and it was based on the concept, three major concepts of the Industrial Revolution. And if we were doing a 15-week course, we would really lay it out in even greater detail, but these phrases. And I'll define them. Rugged individualism, social Darwinism, and laissez-faire capitalism. Social Darwinism, rugged individualism, and laissez-faire capitalism. So let's begin with social Darwinism. That was the controlling concept of the Industrial Revolution. When people read Darwin, and they read Darwin, and they took from Darwin the idea, and they developed it, that Darwin in his Origin of Species was onto a huge idea. And when Darwin wrote The Origin of Species, that it was a brilliant insight, not only into, as people read about it and thought about it, a brilliant insight, not only just to the animal kingdom of competition, but also to the industrial kingdom, the kingdom of individuals, the competition between races, the white man's burden, that the competition among nations as well, that Darwin was onto something. It was more than simply competition in the lagoon with fish, if you will, or turtles in the Galapagos Islands, that he was onto a huge idea, competition, natural selection, if you will. Darwin never used the word evolution, never. That was jammed down his throat much later on. He talked about natural selection, survival of the fittest. And these ideas were more than simply germane to the jungle, to the forest, to the lagoon. Again, between and among nations, industries, individuals, races, and to get in the way of that natural process of natural selection, survival of the fittest, and to compromise, that's the best word, to compromise, to jeopardize survival of the fittest, is going to lead to the survival of the least fit. And then we here as a race, as the Anglo-Saxon race, we here will go the way of the dinosaur, the dodo bird. So this is an immutable law, social Darwinism, and that all of us are rugged individuals, and we're on our own as rugged individuals. And don't whine about the industrial accident rate. Get well, and if you're missing fingers, well, you were too slow. You're getting slow, it's time to retire. But there was no retirement. When you simply couldn't get out of bed, you rolled over, faced the wall, and you were gone. The average life expectancy at the turn of the century was 47. Now that's the average. Now I know you've got above and below. but it's the 14-hour week, the 10-hour day, and 10 cents an hour rather, and child labor. There's no OSHA. There's no Social Security. There's no liability. It is the robber barons. Great phrase, isn't it? Robber barons, or as they preferred, as an Andrew Carnegie or a DuPont or a John D. Rockefeller, would prefer, that we are captains of industry. That we are the economic founding fathers. The founding fathers of 1776, they're the political founding fathers. We are the economic founding fathers. We built this country, and we moved this country in 35 years. We moved it from the farm to the factory. We moved it from rural America to industrial urban America. And again, the bang, bang, bang of the rivet gun, and the rustle of greenbacks, and the clang of railroad iron. If you go today to the very top of the Sears Roebuck building, and one looks west, you can still see today those rail lines snaking in across the prairie. I mean, someday I'm going to do a short course. I'm going to call it A Tale of Three Cities. It's going to be New York, Chicago, and San Francisco, when I have the time. But that will be when I retire, which will never happen, you see. All right? So that's a timeless promise to myself. But that's something I've been thinking about for a while. So it's social Darwinism, rugged individualism, and laissez-faire, and get out of our way. And for these captains of industry, rugged individuals, the primer, the book to read, and this was a fellow who grew up not too far from here, Frederick Winslow Taylor. And Frederick Winslow Taylor's primer. And it's still available. One can buy it online, and you can read a recent biography of Frederick Winslow Taylor. He grew up in the Springfield area, and his book was The Principles of Scientific Management. Let me underscore that, the principles, if you will, of scientific management, that everything we can observe, we can study, we can conclude, and the fundamental principle of scientific management, it has nothing to do with labor. It has nothing to do with working conditions. It has nothing to do with safety. I mean, you can replace a worker like that. I mean, immigrants were willing to work for a nickel an hour and happy for a job. What a country. I got off the boat, and I'm being offered a job in Chicago at a nickel an hour. The basic principle was efficiency. That was the word, efficiency. There is one best way to do something. And it has nothing to do with worker happiness, safety, the minimum wage, or OSHA, or working conditions. Efficiencies. And the example I always like to use, that there are many, but for efficiencies, John D. Rockefeller, when he kept the books, and he was a tyrant on bookkeeping, he carried out his costs to 3 decimal points. If I know where 1/3 of a cent is going, I'm going to make a profit. I know your costs, I know my costs, and I can move in and I can just absorb you, the Standard Oil Company. Carnegie, concerned about, I have too many men moving coal, and bringing in the first professional consultants, and this is Frederick Winslow Taylor, with the stopwatch. He invented the stopwatch. I'm going to watch you work. How fast can you work? What are wasted motion? How fast can you draw? How fast can you fill a wheelbarrow full of coal? Drive a nail. Put a button on a woman's blouse. Speed, 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 efficiency. You know, immigrants new to the country, new to Pennsylvania, the coal fields, or Virginia, or how about the textile mill, the textile factory, the garment section of New York? They very quickly learned 2 phrases. From the boss, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Among themselves, take it easy, take it easy. Joseph, take it easy, take it easy. Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. Speed, efficiency, rugged individualism. And capturing rugged individualism, and again, not too far from here, was a prolific author of children's books, dime novels, and that is Horatio Alger. And again, he lived somewhere between the Worcester, Springfield area. And he wrote these, and one can buy them. And they're little dime novels, nickel novels. And it is that, you know the phrase, you are a Horatio Alger figure. Means you work hard. And a young lad, basically it was a young lad, and the circumstances could change, but the message was always the same. Hard work, nose to the grindstone. My grandmother would say elbow grease. You need more elbow grease on that floor. Geez, and saying it, I'm having a flashback. Woo! She raised me for quite some time. We need more elbow grease here, Gary. Get that off. And my brother Lance, by the way. It was the storyline, the message, hard work, nose to the grindstone, no complaining, and with a little bit of luck, with pluck and luck, you can make it. And you can buy these books in paperback, and you can read them in half an hour. I mean, again, the framework of the story changes, but the message is do not complain, do not whine, work, 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 and success will come to you. Maybe. We know that doesn't always happen. And as we all hear sometimes, it's better to work smart than to work hard, isn't it? And however you can balance that. So this, by 1900, the American frontier had reached the West Coast. You know, we had had a frontier in this country since, I'm going to use round numbers, since 1600. And by that round numbers, I'm going back to Plymouth Rock. And I know the Plymouth Rock was after 1600. But I like round numbers. I like to round things up, and I like to round things down. I always round down my taxable income, and I round up what the government owes me. Mm-hmm. That's the way to do business. And I have a professional consultant to help me do that. And if you think about it for a minute, that we had a frontier from 1600 at Plymouth Rock, and then it ran out of steam, it ran out of room in San Francisco Bay at another rock, Alcatraz. So when the frontier ended, and the man who announced the close of the frontier was another writer, another historian, if you will, an historian of geography, of demography, of the Western movement, and that was Frederick Jackson Turner. And some guys like to play pool, some guys play cards, some guys really enjoy reading census reports. I don't get it. Frederick Jackson Turner enjoyed reading census reports, the annual and the semi-annual and quarter-annual census reports. And as he lived up in Wisconsin, maybe there's nothing to do up there except read that and fish and whatever, I don't know. I never got fishing. I never got it. I mean, nothing. It never did anything for me. He's flipping through the census reports. And in the 1890 census reports, he noticed something. He said, something's missing here. What's wrong? Something's missing here. And as he flipped through and flipped through and flipped through, he had the aha moment, the epiphany, that in this 1890 census report is missing for the very first time any part of the United States labeled frontier. The frontier is closed. It's over. It ran out of room on the shoreline of the Pacific at San Diego. And he stepped back and he asked a question. We're not going to get into this, but he asked the question, and this is the title of the book, or the essay, The Significance of the Frontier in American History. And now that it's gone, what did it mean historically, demographically, economically? What did it mean in terms of opportunity? And he stepped back and talked about the frontier as being a democratizing force, if you will, of opportunity. That there was always a place, if you were being a little crowded out by the cities or a relationship, whatever, you could pick up and disappear. There's one time in this country you could pick up and disappear. And the frontier was a safety valve. One could disappear, one could get a fresh start, and it democratized the country, and he talked about that. And now that frontier is gone. in 1900. And for many intellectuals and essayists and thinkers, what is the new frontier? What's the new great frontier, the new great ambition to galvanize the American people to new greatness, to a new frontier? It's no accident that John Kennedy in 1960 talked about a new frontier. But his frontier was not in Arizona. It was in space, wasn't it? In civil rights, in education. It was in urban redevelopment and so forth. It was no accident that it was Ted Sorensen, by the way, not Jack Kennedy. It was Ted Sorensen, his favorite speechwriter, that dropped that in. Whenever Jack Kennedy needed a phrase, he went to Ted Sorensen. Every president has a stable of speechwriters, but you've got your favorite. And I need a phrase, I need a word, I need a line. And I can deliver it, just give it to me. I can deliver it. I've got the pace, the voice, and the diction. 1900, the frontier is over. What's the next frontier? And for the next frontier is going to find its resolution in the Spanish-American War of 1898. What do we do next? Well, we want to bark with the big dogs. We want to be a world power. We want to be a world power. We want to bark with the big dogs, like the Germans and the British and the French. The word colonial power is not there yet, but we already are that economic power, by 1900, exploiting, resources as if they are inexhaustible, and they weren't. And of course, speaking of Theodore Roosevelt, he certainly was a man of the frontier, wasn't he? I mean, he's the first conservation president. The word ecology was not in our language yet. So, where do we go here? What's the next big jump? How do we become a world power? And another author, you can still read him today, and the author was Alfred Thayer Mahan. Alfred Thayer Mahan. Never heard of him, have you? Well, you have tonight. If you were alive and well in 1900, you would know the teachings, the apostolic message. I like that phrase. Write that down so I don't forget it. All right, thank you. Well, here, write it on your hand. All right. The apostolic message of Alfred Thayer Mahan. And looking, just as Frederick Jackson Turner asked the question, what was the significance of the frontier in American history? Alfred Thayer Mahan, what is the common denominator? What is the common element of all great nations? And he was a naval guy. In fact, and he became an admiral based on his writings. He said the common denominator of all great nations is that they were sea powers. And by sea power, he meant more than just a navy. He meant a merchant marine. He meant colonies. He meant coaling stations, islands, scattered across the vastness of the Pacific. And as Mahan looked at history, and he stepped back again, the great powers, whether it's the Phoenicians or just moving around in that little lake of the Mediterranean, or later on the Roman Empire, it was sea power. It was being able to project your power over the ocean. An aircraft carrier is that, isn't it? That's why it's called an aircraft carrier. It projects power, striking power. And he said the Dutch, the Portuguese, the Spanish, the Germans, the French, sea power, and not just navies, but as I said, colonies, merchant marines, coaling stations, to be able to, for example, the Hawaiian Islands are positioned perfectly in midway across the Pacific toward the markets of Japan and, more importantly, China. It's no accident that the United States Marine Corps kicked Queen Liliuokalani. Don't ask me to spell it. Maybe I can pronounce it one more time quickly if I don't think about it. It's like saying Czechoslovakia, which I think I can spell. Queen Liliuokalani, had to be kicked off the throne because we wanted Pearl Harbor as a naval station and a coaling station to be able to take on water, make repairs, pick up coal, if you will, to heal the sick. I'm thinking out loud with you here. We all remember Secretary of State Seward Lincoln's Secretary of State and Andrew Johnson's Secretary of State, and purchasing Alaska. Sewett's folly? Well, in part, that was to keep the Russians away from the Pacific Northwest. But also Seward, looking at how the Aleutian Islands kind of trailed out, into the Pacific. And if you look at the Aleutian Islands, they kind of trickle out into the Pacific. These are coaling stations for another part of the Pacific. And Alfred Thayer Mahan, along with talking about the influence of sea power upon history, great nations are naval nations. And we don't have that great we do not have a two-ocean navy yet. And we need one. And we need a navy that is the battleships, and a brand new generation of battleships. They were called dreadnoughts, castles of steel, that they were unsinkable, unstoppable. So was the Titanic, until it ran into the iceberg, you see. And the story is always told from the point of view of the Titanic. I think the story should be told from the point of view of the iceberg. I mean, the iceberg was minding its own business. The Titanic wasn't. You're in my hood, right? That's another thing I have to work on, right? The iceberg, the point of view of the iceberg. You could say I have too much time on my hands. That these things float in and out of my head, because it's a big draft up here that float in and out of my head. So the influence of sea power, economic power, and all of this, markets, the markets of Asia, the markets of China, that these robber barons, captains of industry, we have the American market, but we need foreign markets to make a buck, and more than a buck. These men did not pay income taxes, by the way. I mean, Cornelius Vanderbilt, in his checkbook, in his back pocket, had more cash on hand than the United States government. I can't make that up. I mean, J.P. Morgan, with his wealth, he bailed out the United States government with his wealth. We can't afford our bills. Well, here, I'll help you out. Here's a loan from a citizen to tide you over the rough times. I'm an ATM machine for the United States government. I mean, those were different days. The Spanish-American War is going to bring together the military power, the dream of being a colonizing power. This guy's spooking me out, moving around like that. Not really. The markets of China to open up Japan, to further open up Japan. In 1896, another Republican president was elected. If you look at election cycles, there are 4 broad election cycles in American history that go right down to 2016. The middle one was from 1860 to 1932, 1860 to 1932, in which of the 18 presidential elections, 14 were won by the Republican Party. So, I mean, this is Lincoln and the Republican Party. And the only 2 exceptions in which Democrats were elected from 1860 to 1932, Woodrow Wilson, elected twice, Democrat, and Grover Cleveland. When's the last time you heard that name? Never, right? Grover Cleveland, elected twice. Other than that, it's been a Republican dynasty. I just wanted to mention that, just because it's the way the country was voting and the way and where the monies were going, and that McKinley was a Republican. In 1896, I'm going to make sure I've got this right. In 1896, William McKinley was elected president. William McKinley, Republican from Ohio, a very affable, jovial guy, guy who liked to meet people, a gold bug. In other words, where we're not going to back our currency with silver. That's inflationary. I have a meaning for that. It's called a gold bug. We need to go back on the gold standard. Did Donald Trump mention something about that, going back on the gold standard? Did I hear that? I must have dreamt that. I don't know. In 1896, William McKinley ran against William Jennings Bryan, a Democrat. And William Jennings Bryan ran a good campaign, and one of the themes of his campaign, I'm going to knock you right out of your seats with this. This is exciting. This is going to make your blood run hot. There better be ice in that next room. Ready for this? Bimetallism. See, you're underwhelmed, all right? I was so afraid you would be underwhelmed. Bimetallism, B-I, and then metalism. And how boring, but back then it was a big issue. It meant we need to back our currency with silver and gold, bimetallism. Why? Because we have more silver than gold, and if we back our currency with silver, there'll be inflation, and these hard-pressed farmers that are being stretched by bankers in New York can pay off their loans with inflated money. And that appealed, that appealed to many, the farm vote. McKinley's a gold bug. We don't want any part of that. It's a phony economy. In 1898, here's why I mentioned that. In 1898, it was that bimetallism appealed to large segments of voters on the prairie because these bankers have stiffed us with high rates, and we can pay off our loans with cheap money if it's backed with silver, as there's more silver than gold. In 1898, William Jennings Bryan was positioning himself to run against McKinley in 1900. And added to bimetallism, I still didn't get a reaction. Added to that absolutely scorching idea of bimetallism. Maybe you remember, let me give it another try. Maybe you remember in school reading William Jennings Bryan's speech, the Cross of Gold speech. You know, that farmers and labor are being crucified on a cross of gold, that a dollar is a dollar. With inflation, we can pay off a dollar loan with 80 cents if we back it in silver. So I'm back with, and he really dressed it up. It wasn't bimetallism. Here it was in 1898, getting ready for 1900. Free silver. Free silver, not hi-yo, free silver, and free Cuba. Free silver, just mine it, and free Cuba. And why free Cuba? Because Spain was, in Cuba, there was a violent revolution against Spanish control. Cuba was one of the few nations that was unable to wiggle away from European colonial powers during the Napoleonic Wars. I mean, they all did, but Spain kept its claws on Cuba. And now in the 1890s, a violent, bloody revolution had erupted on the island of Cuba. And we here in America, we're only 90 miles away. We need to help the good people of Cuba. It's a humanitarian effort, you see, because what the Spanish have done to crush the rebellion, they've brought in one of their hired guns from Spain, the notorious General Valer, Butcher Valer, as he was nicknamed in the press, setting up these detention centers, concentration camps, going into the villages, rounding up people, and putting them in these camps, surrounded by moats of water and sharpened barbed wire to make sure they cannot be recruited by the revolution, you see. And people like Fidel Castro. I mean, Fidel Castro began with 18 men and women in the mountains, and we know the rest of that story. You know, there's a terrific film, you know, that deals with another piece of the Spanish-American War out in the Philippines. It's by John Sayles, and it's called Amigo, just Amigo. And Sayles usually takes kind of a lefty look at certain issues. But Amigo talks about the revolutionaries and the American decision to stay in the Philippines and the conflict that led to. More about that later. So Cuba, the good people of Cuba are being imprisoned. The women are being raped. The men are being tortured. The children are being starved. And we are doing nothing about this. They're only 90 miles away. And picking up that story and running with it because it sold papers. Just like there was competition between steel and lumber and oil, there was competition between William Randolph Hearst and Joseph Pulitzer to sell newspapers. And the more lurid the story, the most sensational the story, it sold newspapers. So it's called the yellow press today, sensational reporting. And they drum this up. And we need to declare war against Spain. We need to help the good people of Cuba. We needed help in our revolution against an old world colonial power. The French rode to the rescue and helped us. We needed help. They need help. the white man's burden. Our brown brothers in the Caribbean, they need help. And this McKinley administration is doing nothing. It's a humanitarian issue. It's also about colonial power. It's also about knocking off Spain, an old world power, and being able to put a notch on our gun butt. It's all in using the Navy and maybe markets and so forth, as in Theodore Roosevelt, to strut our stuff later on, walk softly and carry a big stick. We're going to end with that. So McKinley wants no part of war. I don't want war. Why? McKinley was the last president to have served on a Civil War battlefield. He knew the sounds and the sights of a blasted body and men crying for water and men with the death rattle. I don't want that for this generation of men. I don't want that. And that war was 35 years ago, almost, the end of that war. And I know these young lads have heard the war stories of their fathers and their uncles. And you know how it is. Memory is very exclusive. And all they're hearing is about the camaraderie, the campfire, and being together and soldiering. And that we tip we remember, we tip a cup to the memory of fallen comrades who died of neat, clean wounds. McKinley, that's a lie. War is a lie. I don't want it for this generation. I've seen the blasted bodies of soldiers. But that yellow press, what is McKinley doing? Nothing. Nothing. This is a humanitarian effort. And William Jennings Bryan, I'm getting ready for 1900. I'm going to roll this guy out. Free silver and free Cuba. How can we? We're only 90 miles away. McKinley wants to get reelected. Most presidents want to get reelected. That's pretty much a truism, isn't it? And events trap McKinley. Two events in particular. One was that the Spanish ambassador to Washington, D.C., a man by the name of Delome, sent a private letter in a diplomatic pouch to one of his compatriots in Havana. And in the Havana post office, somebody broke open the diplomatic pouch, extracted the letter, read it, and sent it back to Joseph Pulitzer, and the Hearst Corporation. And in the Delome letter, Minister Delome warned his Havana counterparts, be careful about how you treat the insurrection. You're getting bad press in the United States. And McKinley, and this really was a bombshell, McKinley is weak. He's a weakling, he's weak, he's a creature of public opinion, that he has his ears so close to the ground, he's got grasshoppers in them. And if you're not careful, you might cause a ruckus in the American press, in the American Congress, and he might declare war just to quiet the press and to make sure that he gets reelected in 1900. Now that letter was purloined. I love that word. That letter was stolen, and it wound up in the press. And the yellow press talked about this as being the greatest insult to an American president in the history of the country. And what is President McKinley going to do about this insult? It's as if the gloves have been taken off and he's been slapped across the face by it. What are you going to do, President McKinley? Are you a man? Yeah, I am. I have a pediatrician. He told me I'm a man. I still have a pediatrician. Who wants to grow up, right? I'm a Toys R Us kid. So this Delome letter, and Spain apologized for it. Madrid apologized. They recalled Delome. They also removed Butcher Wehler, shut down the concentration camps, if you will. They made a recommendation that Cuba could become part of it, what was like a Spanish Commonwealth. And to make sure that everything is on the up and up, we are requesting that the Pope mediate the differences between the revolutionaries and the Spanish government. Now, I don't think the Pope's in that business, but that wasn't enough. That wasn't enough. McKinley, I'll show you what I'm made of. I'm going to keep an eye on you, and I'm going to grab one of these brand new dreadnoughts, one of these brand new battleships, right out of the cellophane wrapper, the USS Maine. And I'm going to steam it into Havana Harbor to show that I'm interested, I'm concerned, and we're keeping an eye on you. Captain Sigsbee, make sure the American presence is seen and felt in Havana Harbor. So Sigsbee sails into Havana Harbor, and one night, the ship blows up. Now, it just, boom, bang, it blows up. And there are 262 American sailors that are dead. Now, the yellow press, if you want to take a look at the headlines, take a look at the drawings when they show the USS Maine, brand new, right out of the cellophane wrapper, smelled like a brand new car, blown up. And the way they drew it, it's cracked in half, and sailors are airborne. I mean, they're airborne being pitched into Havana Harbor. Nothing like that happened. The immediate assumption, which was incorrect, the immediate assumption is this was done by Spanish saboteurs. You know, that somebody put on their snorkel gear, snorkeled into Havana Harbor, took a bomb, bounced it off the hull of the Maine, and bang, it blew up. Now, that's not what happened. Doesn't matter. You know, the truth rarely matters. It's perception. So the yellow press is banging with this, and they bring in Captain Sigsbee to testify, you know, before a committee. You know, that we have a committee here. Captain Sigsbee, please tell the country what happened here. And Sigsbee said, I don't think there was an external explosion. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time. What had happened is some nitwit, some moron, some sailor was down where they keep the gunpowder and either lit a butt, struck a spark, and it was an internal explosion. It blew inside out, not from the outside in. Well, nobody wanted to hear that. That was an accidental explosion. This was done by Spain. They're testing us. It's time for war. War, war, war. And McKinley in April of 1898 goes before Congress and asks for a declaration of war. And this is where Theodore Roosevelt, Assistant Secretary of the Navy, resigned. And before he resigned, he gave the orders. He had the codes, he had the telegraph codes, and his boss was out getting a haircut or something. Actually, it was a massage, and a haircut and a massage. And he telegraphed to Admiral Dewey, steam from Manila Bay. The war is on, and sink the Spanish fleet in the Philippines. Now, very few Americans knew where the Philippines were. They had no idea. And to their amazement, when they woke up and that we've attacked the Philippines, I thought this was all over Cuba, Cuba, Cuba. Where are the Philippines? And McKinley said, you know, when I heard about this, I didn't know where they were either. He said that. He said, I got a map, and I found out where the Philippines were. Now, Theodore Roosevelt had absolutely no business doing that. That was a fireable offense, but he quit. And he had his own money to form. He became Colonel Theodore Roosevelt and the Rough Riders. You know, the Rough Riders. And these were men that he recruited, he paid, he outfitted them, he bought them horses and so forth out of his pocket. It's like Trump, I'll pay for this election out of my pocket. Theodore Roosevelt, I want a piece of this action in Cuba. As he said afterwards, I would have left my wife's deathbed rather than to have missed this great adventure. Now, I wonder how Mrs. Roosevelt dealt with that. Honey, I know. I really didn't mean it, but I did at the time. I wanted the adventure. This is Theodore Roosevelt, the adventure. You know, get action, you know, be involved. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt was a volcano of a man. Energy equals TR squared. That's Theodore Roosevelt. Interested in everything. Brilliant, brilliant. Nuts, but nonetheless, brilliant. And the Rough Riders, you know, are off for Cuba. The only person who rode up San Juan Hill on a horse was Theodore Roosevelt. In the confusion of leaving Florida quickly enough so I don't miss the war, all the horses were left behind. You know, it's like when you're coming back from vacation. We left with 4 children. I only count 2. Oh, keep driving, keep driving. They'll show up in the mail. Right? The FedEx guys will deliver them. Where are the horses? Theodore Roosevelt had his horse, and he rode up San Juan Hill. Everybody else, I mean, gentlemen charge, they ran up San Juan Hill. And for him, it was the whistle of the bullets, was like music. He called it my crowded hour, to charge up San Juan Hill and shooting these Spaniards. He said, like jackrabbits. That's what he said. Shoot them like jackrabbits. You couldn't get away with that today. That's Theodore Roosevelt. And when he wrote his after-action report, maybe I can use this. This will work. Oh my God. A Christmas piano. What am I doing? Oh, this is okay. This is boogie and blues. I don't want to think about Christmas in June. When Theodore Roosevelt got the map out and was writing his after-action report, and you have to do this, you know that. You write an after-action report for your commanding officer. And he looked at the hill that he had charged up. Oh, this won't do. This will not do. The name of the hill was Kettle Hill. Like in tea kettle? Kettle Hill. No way. No way did I charge up Kettle Hill. It's not romantic enough. It's not glorious enough. Oh, but wait a minute. The neighboring hill is called San Juan Hill. So what difference does it make? A hill is a hill, right? Right? It's a neighboring hill, so it became the charge up San Juan Hill. Much more romantic, much more Spanish, much more authentic, and, of course, the stuff of Theodore Roosevelt's legend, the charge up San Juan Hill. John Hay, Secretary of State, called the Spanish-American War that splendid little war. Remember that? That splendid little war. And what was splendid about it? Well, one is that in the United States became more than just a hemispheric power. We became a world power because we grabbed the Philippines. You see, when Admiral Dewey blew the Spanish fleet out of the water in Manila Bay, it wasn't fair. They had wooden ships. He had steel ships. And it was over. It was over before it started. And of course, the leader of the Philippine resistance movement, Emilio Aguinaldo, welcomed Admiral Dewey. Like, welcome, amigo, welcome. Well, a decision was made to hang on to the Philippines. You see, when the war started, when the war opened, there was a resolution by Senator Teller from Colorado, Senator Teller. And in the Platt Amendment of Resolution, as the war got going, it read, we want nothing out of this. We have no imperial designs at all. We just want to free the good people of Cuba and leave them alone. We're just happy to help. Well, by the end of the war, it had been reconsidered, and the Platt Amendment, senator from Connecticut, said, well, maybe we don't want to give it all back. Maybe we really do want to. Even though we're thinking about maybe rethinking the Hawaiian Islands, let's keep them. It's a wonderful place. Look at Pearl Harbor. For a fleet, for a coaling station, and for a honeymoon, you can't beat it. I made that up. I made that up. I did. I made that up. I always tell my girl students, if you want to go if you're planning to get married, and that's a different decision, I said, promise me one thing. On your honeymoon, you will never go to Disney World. It is a preview of what's to come. Crying kids with gobs of snot coming out of their nose. That's what's coming. Said, don't go to Disney World. Anywhere but Disney World. They think I'm nuts. And then I tell them, elope. I always tell them elope. Your mother will cry. She'll get over it. Your father will bless the wisdom of his new son-in-law. You saved me 30 grand. Elope, girls. Your mother will get over it. You can always have a party later. And I'll say, these are words of wisdom. I said, this is Papa Bear talking to you. Elope and stay away from Disney World. That's good advice. And to you people that are watching in Northborough as well. And across the fruited plain. I'll open no Disney World. That splendid little war, an empire. And when Dewey told Aguinaldo, we're not going home. We're going to grab the Philippines as well. He went back into the jungle, and a four-year civil war, a terrorist war, became a terrorist war. This is where waterboarding was first used against the Filipinos. It wasn't called waterboarding and had another name for it, but there were 4,000 men that were lost, and this was America's first jungle war, by the way. The jungle war in the Philippines. It wasn't Vietnam or the Pacific Islands in World War II. It was in the Philippines, and this is the film John Sayles' Amigo. The Americans come in, and by day, they have the countryside and the villages, and by night, the revolution comes in. The recruiters come in. Amigo, who's the amigo? You came as our benefactors to free us, and you're still the amigo, and you want to colonize us, and this is all part of the Platt Amendment. Well, we can't let the Philippines go. When McKinley finally figured out where they were, we cannot let them go. We have the white man's burden. They're not ready for democracy yet. They know nothing about the Electoral College and running for office and primaries and bumper stickers. PAC money. They're not ready for. We have to democratize them, and we have to nurture them. It's our responsibility, as the white man's burden, and we also have to Christianize them. Now, Spain, Catholic Spain, had been in the Philippines for 400 years. How many times can you be baptized? Well, we need to baptize them again because these missionaries need a mission. They need to go somewhere and Christianize these heathens that have been baptized 3 or 4 times already. And then when we finally get into China, wow, there's the market. China. I can't make this up. Baptisms in China were done with hoses, fire hoses, because there were so many folks that wanted to be baptized. It's like the lawn sprinkler. Here we go. Here we go. All right, say after me. You've just been baptized. I can't make that up. I've been baptized 4 times. I have been. They never drove it out of me. I've been baptized 4 times. I can't tell you why the last one happened, but I have been. And just to get the devil out of me. Leonard, what boys did you bring to this new marriage? Right? They're devils. They're divils. I need to baptize them again. And again, and again, and again. Never worked. I love it. I'm proud of it. I beat those nuns, too. I was incarcerated for 8 years in a parochial school. I did time. I did time to beat it out of me. I beat them. So we're going to hang on to the Philippines. We're hanging on to the Philippines. It's the white man's burden. And back into the jungle goes Aguinaldo, and 4 years later. So it's that splendid little war. We have an empire. We're a world power. We've been able to strut our stuff with our dreadnoughts. And the country met Theodore Roosevelt. How splendid. It met Theodore Roosevelt, a genuine war hero. In a little war, it was over in 10 weeks, with about 400 deaths of American servicemen. Most of those deaths were not from Spanish bullets. They were from heat stroke, dehydration, and food poisoning. Salmonella, botulism. In the Spanish-American War, this is the first time that they weren't GIs yet, the first time that American soldiers carried K rations, C rations. Now, the sanitation in Chicago, Illinois, where this was made in the meatpacking industry, this is why we have the Food and Drug Administration, FDA. Thank you, Theodore Roosevelt. And so these were just, very unhealthy, very unsanitary packing conditions. So you're a soldier, and you're carrying around a turkey dinner in your knapsack. It's been in your knapsack for 30 days or something. Say, I feel like a turkey dinner. Hey, fellas, let's get the guitars out, get a fire going, and we'll sing Kumbaya, and I'll have my turkey dinner. He wakes up dead. It's food poisoning. So a combination of botulism, heat stroke, and bug bites and insects, but a splendid little war. And John Hay, adding to that phrase, a splendid little war, he declared to the world, we want a piece of the action in China. We've got sharp elbows. I am announcing that we have an open door policy in China, that we want a piece of the action in China. The British were there, the French were there, the Dutch were there, the Germans were there, and we came in with sharp elbows. We want to belly up to the table. We want a piece of the action of the markets of China. So that splendid little war, an empire, bless you, an empire and McKinley, we just can't turn these people loose. There was a huge debate in the Senate over ratifying the treaty to hang on to the, well, to be a real presence in Cuba and also to hang on to the Philippines. And it rocked the country. And as to, where were you on this? Are we a colonial power? And those who said, no, we're not. Have you forgotten our history? That this nation was birthed in anti-colonialism. We were tired of British control. We wanted our independence. And now we are imposing our control over people in the Philippines, 8,000 miles from where we are, from Northborough. Do you know their language? No. Do you know the songs that the mothers sing, the lullabies they sing to their children? No. Do you know their customs? No. Why, in God's name, do you want to colonize people 8,000 miles away and you know nothing about them? It's a complete rejection of our past. No, no, no. And for the others, when the flag goes up, it must never come down. It must never come down. Hawaii, Cuba, the Philippines, or whatever, and it's our burden, it's our responsibility. It passed by one vote. That Treaty of Paris, ending the Spanish-American War, passed by a single vote. There was such a conflict and dissension over, have we forgotten our past? Don't you remember who we are, who we were, what we stand for? One vote. We are an imperial power here. And in 1900, McKinley running for re-election, and I'm choosing Theodore Roosevelt as my vice president, a real bona fide war hero. And he drubbed William Jennings Bryan. Now we know that McKinley, a few months later, in September of 1901, traveling in Buffalo, I spent a week there one day, in Buffalo. Thank you. He was assassinated in Buffalo, and Theodore Roosevelt is suddenly President of the United States. And he had been governor of New York, and the Republicans in New York were so tired of him, he was everywhere, that he couldn't be bought. He was incorruptible. He doesn't know how the game is played. The rustle of greenbacks, robber barons, Tammany Hall. He's clean. He's clean. That's not how we do business here. It's all about corruption. That's how things get done. And so let's see if we can ice him on the ticket in 1900. And they did. And now suddenly he's President of the United States. That cowboy is now President of the United States. And as he said, it's an awful way to come to the White House. But let's just forget about it, that I am the steward of the people. I represent everybody. And the presidency is the bully pulpit. That's where the phrase comes from, the bully pulpit. And it's Theodore Roosevelt who changes the White House. He changes the logo on the stationery from the Executive Mansion, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, White House. That's Theodore Roosevelt. And you can do with that as you like. For me, I am a steward of the people. I represent everyone. I cannot be bought. Only good things come from the Oval Office, the bully pulpit. I give you the White House, and that's Theodore Roosevelt, America's first celebrity president. We've only had two, Theodore Roosevelt and John Kennedy. And Theodore Roosevelt was America's first celebrity president. He loved the job, and he was good at it. He read 3 books a day. He was absolutely brilliant. He had his hands in everything. But that's a whole separate course. So our marker this evening was to get the election of Theodore Roosevelt, and he liked to keep in shape. He liked to keep in shape once or twice a month. He liked to box with the Army champ. He had a boxing ring in the basement of the White House. Nixon had a bowling alley. Jimmy, he did. What a solitary, pardon me?
What's the comparison?
Well, no, no, there's no comparison. It's just that, presidents have their activities. John Kennedy had a swimming pool. You know what that activity was all about, and everybody had to swim naked. And Jimmy Carter, not Jimmy Carter, I don't know what Jimmy Carter had. What a boring guy he must be, or was. No, he's still alive. He had no sense of humor. Who was it? Bill Clinton had a small movie theater. Theodore Roosevelt had a boxing ring. He wanted to keep in shape, because what he would do is he would spar once or twice a month with the Army champ, and to keep in shape, bob and weave and duck and so forth. And I need to be quick. He grew up so asthmatic. When most people thought he would never get past his 5th birthday, that he would have these fits of asthma. And when you were in the room with him, it was like being in the same room watching someone choke to death. And so he built himself up, and I want to stay in shape. So the Army champ would come in, and he boxed the Army champ. And just keeping in shape and bobbing and weaving, and like Muhammad Ali, float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. That's Theodore Roosevelt. So one of the new boxing champs came in, and he hadn't had the little workout with the president yet. He didn't know what was in store, and he came in, and Theodore Roosevelt said, "Where's your shorts? Where's the gloves? Where are your boxing shoes? Come on, you're here to fight me." Fight you? Fight you? I'm not going to fight you. You're the president of the United States. What did you call me? You're the president of the United States. Well, that means I'm your commander-in-chief, doesn't it? Yes, sir. I order you to fight me. All right? So in that match, Roosevelt was unable to slip a punch. One of the punches hit his left eye, detached retina. He always had a blurred vision. Don't tell the champ. Don't tell the champ. What I need to do, I'm a social Darwinist, a rugged individual. My left eye, I don't have that clarity of vision, the acuity of vision. I'm right-handed. So what I need to do is I need to adjust. I'm a rugged individual. I need to fight from this side. I make the adjustment. Otherwise, I go the way of the dinosaur, the dodo bird. Don't tell the champ that I wasn't able to slip the punch. That's Theodore Roosevelt, a celebrity president. Here's a guy, and I'll close with this. The first president have a telephone. The first president have a typewriter. The first president go down in a submarine, a submersible. When Theodore Roosevelt was particularly upset by the way a vote might be going in Congress, or how recalcitrant a congressman or senator might be, he always kept an axe in the Oval Office. And he would work off the tension. He would just rip himself out of the Oval Office, tear off his jacket, go out onto the White House lawn, and take the axe and whack a tree. Whoo, whoo. Can you see it? Whoo. All right, I feel better. Put the jacket back on. I'm back in the Oval Office. I've calmed down. Would that be great television today? All right, would that be great? A great video clip. Here comes the president. He's got the axe, right? He gave it 8 whacks. He must be really upset over something. And back he went. Now, today, you'd be on a gurney. You'd be medicated. But it was Theodore Roosevelt. These are different days and different times and rugged individualism. We're a powerful nation with a powerful president. Walk softly and carry a big stick. Watch your step with me. My eyes are everywhere. I'm like oxygen. I see everything. And as he told the corporate leaders, whenever you're having a meeting in the boardroom, picture me there. I'll find out. And I'll find out if you're not working in the public interest. I have no problem with you making money. I applaud the Industrial Revolution. I don't like thieves. I don't like robber barons. I support labor. And remember, I will find out. I'm Papa Bear. Picture me in the meeting and listening to what you're saying. So there you have it for this evening. Maybe I've stimulated some interest in reading about, Theodore Roosevelt. The building of the Panama Canal. That's TR, the Panama Canal. I'll build it. I'm just going to build it. I'll ask permission later. I'll organize a revolution in Panama, and we'll support the Panamanians, and we'll build it. We'll take over from the French, and we'll be able to get our fleet from the Atlantic to the Pacific quickly. And then we're going to have a separate Pacific fleet and an Atlantic fleet. So we can move around. I can move around as one of the world's policemen, maintain order. War is the natural order of events, and you need to be strong to keep the peace. And I mean to keep the peace. Peace is not natural. War is. And I need to be, and we need policemen in the world. The United States is one, the French are another, the Germans another, and the British are another. And we call the shots. And for Theodore Roosevelt, keep an eye on those Japanese. They're coming big and fast and strong. Keep an eye on them. They just whooped the Russians in the Russo-Japanese War. And I had to negotiate that at, of all places, in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. How does that happen? The Russo-Japanese War, and they negotiated in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. Remember that? You don't remember that, you know? I know you don't remember that. And the Japanese gave us all those cherry trees, didn't they? And they bloomed beautifully every year, but the day after Pearl Harbor, there was a great sentiment to chop them all down, which makes sense, doesn't it? But they were not, and we're all grateful for that. So before I leave, is it time for a beer? No, it isn't. Before I leave, a question maybe? What can I help you with? An observation? Yes, ma'am. Hey, you can't leave yet. Sit. Huh? I love that shit. I love it. I love running the classroom. Pardon me?
I had read reference to Teddy Roosevelt sending the Great White Fleet.
Oh, the Great White Fleet.
What was the purpose of that?
To demonstrate American power.
Where did it go?
It went around the world. And it made stops in all the major ports, particularly in Tokyo Bay. Because you guys just beat the Russians, you're not going to beat us. The Great White Fleet. And Roosevelt and the White Fleet painted that white enamel, not gray. And the Great White Fleet circumnavigated the globe and arrived in New York City. And Roosevelt was there to greet it. Now, he's looking for it but he can't see it just yet because he's got the wrong eye looking, right? He's got the bum eye looking. And all the other people on the pier can see the fleet pulling in, but nobody wants to tell the president, don't you see the fleet yet? Because he wants to say, the fleet is here, the fleet has arrived, and he wants to welcome them. You know, when he went hunting in Africa with his sons would say, you know, Dad's an awful shot, and we have to be with him because if we're not also on that game, he doesn't see it. He hears it, but he doesn't know where it's coming from. So we got to nail it and tell him he shot it. I mean, Dad is a mensch. I mean, he'll get upset. You know, Dad, you got him. You got him right before he gored you. Yes? I got to walk down to hear the question.
Did Theodore Roosevelt staff the National Park Service?
Yes, he did. Yeah, Theodore Roosevelt. The first national park was General Grant, Yellowstone. But Theodore Roosevelt set aside millions of acres of land, national parks and so forth. He was a conservation president. And that's TR, an interesting guy. And worth our time, worth our study. And we don't have people like that today. We do, but they're medicated.
Did Roosevelt also start going after the robber barons?
Yes, he did. Very carefully. Very carefully. That I have no problem with business at all. With bigness and big business, the Industrial Revolution, I have a problem with thieves. And he called them the malefactors of great wealth, the evil men of great wealth. And he went after a few. He went after J.P. Morgan, all right? And he went after a couple. But he wasn't, Roosevelt gets a reputation as being a trust buster. He was not. A trust regulator. Let me look at your books. You know, good business practices, you deserve to make a profit, but you cannot beat up on your employees. A trust regulator, not a trust buster. I have no problem with big business and success. Just check with me. He was everywhere. It's like, as I said, he was like oxygen, or like sunshine. Well, no, oxygen is better because you can have a cloudy day. Yes, I got you.
How many were actually involved in the Spanish-American War? You said 400 died.
400 died. There are about 5,000 or 6,000 soldiers. You know,
Was there a draft? Did he like?
oh, no, people volunteered. Oh, they volunteered. I mean, this was something to be part of, and a once in a lifetime opportunity. Yeah.
How do you get along with Congress?
He got along very well with Congress. He was a negotiator. He was willing to listen. I mean, he wasn't Donald Trump thumping the desk. He was willing to listen, and he got things done. And that was, Roosevelt said that about himself. He said, I get things done. Americans like that. I accomplish things. And that's Theodore Roosevelt. And his reputation, today he's ranked among the near great presidents. He, Wilson, about whom we'll talk about the next time we meet, he, Wilson, and Harry Truman. Please.
6 people from Northborough served in the Spanish-American War. 2 brothers, the Collette brothers, Joseph and John, served in the Spanish-American. John wrote I'm Forever Blowing Bubbles.
Wonderful.
Which is a song here. He got yellow fever. He went from 192 pounds to 109 pounds.
Oh, yeah.
With yellow fever.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That was
Yeah. Walter Reed had not figured out the mosquito, and that came from the Panama Canal. And that's a great story, too. I remember Ronald Reagan ran on that, didn't he? That a Republican built it, I'm a Republican, and Jimmy Carter gave it away. Now, there were reasons why Jimmy Carter did that, and there were good reasons. But for Ronald Reagan, it's morning in America. Our best days are in front of us, not behind us. You know what Ronald Reagan did when he went to the White House? He ripped off, or had ripped off the roof, the solar panels that Jimmy Carter had put on. This is America, right? This morning in America. Our best days are ahead of us. Take those solar panels down. Right? Can't you see it? Can't you see Jimmy Carter? Put those solar panels up. Right? We want to make sure we don't run the air conditioning because it's a waste of energy, and we're going to keep the White House cold in the winter. You know, Tip O'Neill, the great Tip O'Neill, attended one of the early breakfasts that Jimmy Carter ran, and there was nothing there. I mean, there were little bite-sized things, and Tip O'Neill, it's a great. They catch him on camera talking to one of his aides. He's looking at the table. He says, "I thought we won this election." What is this? Tip O'Neill. I know we're going way over. I have to share the story with you. Jimmy Carter liked to present himself as the man from Plains, the peanut farmer, and I'm just one of you guys, and I carry my luggage onto the plane. Well, there was one time where Tip O'Neill was at the airport, and Jimmy Carter was boarding Air Force One, and he had his luggage. I carry my own luggage. I'm from Plains, Georgia. I'm a peanut farmer, and Tip O'Neill picked up one of the pieces of luggage to hand it to Carter. It was empty. And they just exchanged glances like, isn't that great? You're not going to tell, are you? They're empty. Perfect. Somebody else had a thought? Yes.
Why do we still have Guantanamo Bay? Why do we still have Guantanamo Bay? I mean, theoretically, we lost Cuba. Why are we still there?
Why are we still there? We're still there because as part of the deal with Cuba, we also picked up Guantanamo Bay. And Guantanamo Bay was so we could have a naval presence at Guantanamo Bay, the very edge of Cuba, to be able to keep an eye on the approach to the Panama Canal, to defend the approach to the Panama Canal. And we're still there at Guantanamo, and someday we'll go home.